Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Revive FM 94.0. I welcome all our listeners to our drive time radio station. I am your host, Mr. Umar Naveed, and I'm glad to let our listeners know that we'll be joined by a very special guest today, whereby we'll be discussing the situation of COVID in our local vicinity. So, how we are coping with COVID-19 in East London, in Essex, and in the London Borough of Newham, London Borough of Redbridge, Barking and Dagenham, as these are the closest boroughs to us. For this, I am very pleased to let our listeners know that I'm joined by the Member of Parliament for Ilford South, Mr. Sam Tarry. Mr. Tarry, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Hi, Omar. How are you doing? Hi, everyone at Revive FM.
Fantastic. How are you, Sam? How is everything with yourself and your family?
Yeah, very good, thanks. I mean, obviously, like everyone, working from home at points. I've actually just been to my office in Ilford this afternoon for the first time in a few months because we took the opportunity to have it renovated. I'm popping into Parliament only occasionally to go and do things where I'm actually speaking in the parliamentary chamber. But yeah, like everyone, I'm desperate for lockdown to be over and to get back out in the community, meeting people, working with people, and kind of, I'm sure everyone's sick of doing Zoom calls. I'm looking forward to shaking people's hands and actually doing real life meeting. And, look, we know we've still got a little way to go, but we are kind of obviously now headed towards a more positive situation, hopefully.
Fantastic. So I just want to briefly, obviously, discuss how the last year has been and how it's been for the public at large, myself, obviously for yourself. And then we can move on to the vaccination and the rollout of the vaccination and some maybe concerns of the community. So it's good to have someone like yourself on in higher position who can potentially give people that have some kind of apprehensions a bit of clarity of thought. So starting off, if I was thinking of this just before we came online. So if I had told you around about this time last year that the bulk of the population would be in lockdown for a whole year and beyond, I'm sure you would have probably recommended that I go and seek some medical help because it just didn't seem like it was conceivable this time last year. But a full year on, it's been actually quite manic. So do you want to give a little breakdown for how it's been for your local constituency and what you guys have been up to?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's been a really difficult time for everybody in Ilford, and I live in the area. I see every day what the issues and the problems are. We've had some real challenges in terms of originally during the first lockdown and the start of the second lockdown, getting people to comply. People know the famous sort of restaurants and eating places down Ilford Lane. Mm-hmm. When the Chancellor launched his Eat Out to Help Out campaign, might have been good for business, but it's really bad for spreading the coronavirus because the precautions that were put in place, we suddenly had, instead of people turning up just with appointments to go and eat in a restaurant, often hundreds of people queuing outside, no social distancing, no masks being worn. And what we've obviously seen more recently is because the new variant of the virus, the Kent variant of the virus, has been so much more contagious, it's really ripped through our communities. And in a bad way. I mean, we were at a point where we had over 400 people in critical care across the local hospitals in the area. And that is a massive, massive level. Goodmayes Hospital, where normally they have the kind of mental health care unit, having to put an additional 70 ICU beds. I spoke to a good friend of mine, Mohammed Omar, who runs, for people who know, the Gardens of Peace, which is an Islamic burial site in Ilford North and near Hainault. Unfortunately, they're burying 20 people a day, going there to be buried. It shows you what the scale is. And I think during the first lockdown, people took it really, really seriously. But now we're at a point where people are, thankfully, still taking it seriously, but it's really wearing people down. We've also had a situation in terms of businesses. Lots of my work as an MP wouldn't normally be about just working with businesses to support them. this time it's been far more that kind of work, making sure that businesses have got their loans from the banks, have got their government loans, that the local authority, the council has been giving them the grants that they need, and then me actually taking up their issues on behalf and lobbying the Chancellor of the Exchequer, lobbying the government ministers for business to make sure we've got the right support in place, because Ilford's a very entrepreneurial community, lots of SMEs, lots of people wanting to start, already running small businesses. We've seen so many go to the wall already. And what I want to be confident is that when we get to the end of the health crisis, we're not facing a massive unemployment crisis. And just to let you know, currently, right now, there are in Ilford South alone, it's not even the rest of Redbridge, there are 13,000 people on the furlough scheme, one of the highest in the country. Yeah, we've also got on the additional support scheme another 8,000 people, and then we've got on top of that nearly 10,000, I think 9,500 on universal credit. That's a phenomenal amount of people in one way getting government subsidy to get through and to get by. And obviously anyone will know that we've locked horns with the government recently because they refused to keep in place the £20 a week upgrade in the universal credit. £20 is not a lot of money, but if you're on the breadline, that's going to make a huge difference to how you can provide for your family. And whether it be that or free school meals, the government have obviously, been not prepared to vote with us to make sure that, we put those provisions in place. But look, it's not all doom and gloom. Things are moving in a more positive direction at our local hospitals. I had a conversation this morning with the directors of the local NHS trusts and North East London Trust, and things have ticked away from that 1 minute to midnight scenario. But don't get me wrong, things are still incredibly serious. My message to all your listeners is, you've really got to stick with the guidelines, not just the space and social distancing, not visiting your friends. All of that stuff is so important, because I know from having, people locally who are both members of the Labour Party and constituents, the amount of people I know now who've actually died from COVID or spent weeks and weeks in critical care is just phenomenal. And so anyone out there who still thinks it is not a real thing, that this is not a danger, it's not going to happen to them. Well, I spoke to a young friend of mine recently who runs one of the local Pakistani news channels. He's a reporter. We played cricket together over the summer. I rang him up and he was, hardly able to breathe as he spoke to me down the phone. And he thought, he's tough. He's only 30, he's really fresh, fit, cricketer. But again, it hit him really hard. And so this is a really real thing. And it's so stressful being stuck at home with your family. If you're a student, trying to learn at home. But there is light at the end of the tunnel, and there is inspiration. One of the most positive things of the last year has been the community coming together through the kind of mutual aid program. Because my office decided, my team and me decided, we couldn't just wait for the local authority or government to act. We thought we need to do stuff now, like right now, during that first lockdown, to help people, to get food parcels out to people, get support to people. And so I worked with the local Sikh Gurdwara, a number of the local mosques and churches and local trade unions, and we were able to put on a food program delivering over 4,000 hot meals to different good causes, with homeless charities or vulnerable residents across Ilford South on a weekly basis. And that's a huge effort. And it was people saying, look, even though their community has been impacted, that they were prepared to step up and to get involved. We've also set up 2 new food banks as well, and a lot of that work has continued, and it has been inspirational. People saying, actually, we are not just going to hide away. We're going to try and help those who are in even worse situation than ourselves. But look, as an MP, it's been a steep learning curve. I've been MP just for over a year. Parliament's not functioning in the normal way. Often I'm in Parliament to do like a speech, but it's a ghost town. There's only a couple of other MPs around. It's a very strange place to be. All my staff, like many businesses, are working virtually, working from home across Ilford. So it's been a very strange time to have become an MP, one which I think our levels of people getting in touch with my office have gone through the roof. Last month, for example, we completed over 800 pieces of casework from local residents. That's just in 1 month. So it gives you an idea of the volume of pressure coming into my office, people who really need support on a whole range of issues.
I totally agree with that. Coming in just I think over a year ago, it's been really probably hectic for you, so I can appreciate that. And secondly, I totally agree that the communities have come together, especially because the constituency that you're from, there's a high volume of ethnic minorities from there, and I've actually been quite surprised at how compliant the ethnic minorities have been. You sometimes you read the newspapers and you actually think that they're the ones that are flouting the rules, but generally in the mosques and in the local communities, I think our ethnic minorities have done fantastically well. My question is, you obviously hear all the time that your health is your wealth, no doubt. So from the health aspect, I think we've done quite well, where we've requested of everyone to shield and stay at home. There's obviously been questions raised with reference to how the government has handled things. You could bring in obviously the travelling and the COVID testing, that they've done it so late. But generally, with the furlough scheme set to come to an end, and as you're mentioning, you're getting over 800 potential queries a month. When we do slowly start to roll away from the lockdown and we go back to some semblance of normality, how big do you think the problems are going to be, especially with businesses going out of totally going bust, people's mental health? I don't really think that potentially this is the big headache at this stage, but I think we've got much bigger issues to handle when we do come out of this. What about your thoughts on that?
No, I think, Umar, you're absolutely spot on. As we emerge from the health crisis, and hopefully we will once the vaccine's actually given properly to all the population, we are unfortunately facing a huge unemployment crisis. I've been supporting and dealing with loads of firms. I actually brought the Shadow Minister for small to medium enterprises and businesses, Lucy Powell, virtually to Ilford recently to have a conversation with business leaders. Even last week, I had a meeting with the people that run the Ilford Shopping Exchange. Because people are really worried. We've lost some of the big high street firms, Debenhams and
they're all going one by one.
A whole bunch of different firms that have kind of collapsed because people have shifted to online. We've also got smaller, more specialist businesses. And obviously, look, lots of the local the local restaurants have obviously adopted and gone for like takeaway, so they've managed to survive, but not all of them have. So what concerns me is that you have a situation where the government really are going to have to step in, continue to keep that furlough support in place, continue to keep the grants coming to keep businesses going, particularly the viable businesses. This could be a whole range of things. I mean, I had a conversation this morning. I was at a rally of over 400 people online about Britain's coach industry. Now, we've got a couple of coach firms in Ilford, and they've not had any government support at all. And this is an industry that's now completely on its knees and nationally employed 27,000 people. So every different sector is being affected. And I just see this as being akin to a wartime situation. Borrowing costs are at an all-time low. We need to be prepared to invest in the future now. That means helping businesses survive through loans and grants. That means also focusing on education, like properly allowing teachers to plan ahead for how we help pupils continue to learn digitally. One of the big problems we've had in Ilford is, we have some very poor communities. We have at least 3 council wards that are amongst the most deprived in the whole of Essex. So myself and a number of local charities have been raising money and delivering laptops to local schools, local primary schools. I went to a few primary schools, including my own primary school, over the last couple of months to deliver laptops. But it's not enough. We need the government to be stepping in. I had a meeting this afternoon with head teachers from 5 of the major secondary schools in Ilford South. And again, all of them having had problems with, not enough digital infrastructure in terms of laptops and internet provision for kids at home. So the government does need to step in. And it kind of makes me laugh a little bit because, I remember during the last election in 2019, Jeremy Corbyn's plans for national free broadband got attacked so massively. And actually right now, that is absolutely what we could do with. That would be a huge bonus to all of my families in Ilford South. But it shouldn't be a situation where we are having to take matters into our own hands and go and raise money for charities. So that's the government needs to step in. This is about the future of the country and about the next generations of people coming through, having had the proper education that they need and that they deserve. So I am concerned, really concerned about the future, but I'm going to be putting absolutely massive amounts of pressure on the government to deliver on, supporting local businesses, helping grow our local economy, supporting our education system locally as well. And I think that, look, I mean, I'm not going to use this opportunity just to attack the government, because actually I think most people have realised just how much they failed. They failed on PPE, they failed on track and trace, and finally they're starting to get something right on the vaccinations. But even that, hasn't been as ideal as it could have been. But we are where we are, and we've got to look forwards. And so one of the key things I wanted to talk about today is that one of the problems we've got in Ilford South is we have for a long time, we were the worst, most infected place in Britain for the coronavirus. Our local hospitals were like literally 1 minute from midnight in terms of collapsing. There weren't enough ICU beds, the volume of people coming in. And so it's really important that people still continue to adhere to all those lockdown guidelines. But also I took a visit last week to Ilford Town Hall. We've got our main vaccination centre. Now, obviously, they've been focusing on over 75s and then over 65s. But one of the problems we're having is people from South Asian heritage communities and Afro-Caribbean heritage communities have been more reluctant to take up the vaccination offer that's there. Now, the only way that we're going to actually genuinely get to the other side of this pandemic and to get back to normal life is to have everyone vaccinated, because it works by creating herd immunity. And if you have a group of people...
What makes you actually think that... what do you think the main reason is behind that, the hesitancy on behalf of the BAME community to take the vaccine?
I think in the Afro-Caribbean African community, there have been some historic issues around major pharmaceutical companies exploiting people in Africa, and people, basically are aware of that. But this is a different situation. These different companies, and this has been done by the top British scientists, world leaders actually on this. It's been fully tested. People in my own family have had it. It's totally safe. I think it's, unfortunately, we live in a world, and we've seen what happened with, for example, Donald Trump, where false information, fake news, misinformation spread on the internet and spread on Facebook and other social media channels. People don't trust the mainstream media that much anymore. Actually, that's great why, you've got local channels like Revive FM, which people tune into for more trusted news. But the reason I mention all of that is it means that people are getting their information from sources that are not reliable. They're getting, conspiracy theories pushing a kind of crazy agenda. And when you're getting all your information reinforced to you through Facebook, through a number of other kind of social media platforms, all saying the same thing, I think that's created a real problem. So you've got people out there believing some, frankly, complete nonsense about the virus, and not just about the virus, but about the vaccine. And so that has meant that there's a degree of hesitancy. And in fact, actually...
sorry, just to cut you. Could you kindly delve into... obviously, I do accept that there is an element of fake news and conspiracy theories, especially in the BAME community. But is it just that, or other than the fake news being spread, is there anything else that you've spoken to in terms of your constituents, why there is such a high level of hesitancy? And what can actually be done? Because let's be honest, I agree with you, mainstream media hasn't been portrayed very well, and they haven't done very well in the last few years. And sadly, politicians are very similar in that line as well, where they're saying something one day, they're saying the exact same opposite thing the next day. So which are you suggesting maybe the community leaders need to come out, the places of worship need to come out and encourage?
Yeah, definitely. All of those things. So I've done a video a couple of weeks ago more about adhering to lockdown restrictions. You can see it on my Facebook page. I've got quite a well-known local rabbi. I have Mohammed Omar from the Gardens of Peace. I have community leaders from the Sikh Gurdwara, and I have one of the leading local Church of England priests, all saying the same thing: a message of hope, but a message of responsibility, that we've actually got to stick with these guidelines to get to the other side. And that's, I think, what we've got to see in terms of the vaccination. I was on the Islam channel earlier doing a pre-record. It should be on the Islam channel tonight, with a group of local medical staff, including a doctor from Ilford, from Loxford, making exactly the points that the vaccination is safe, that we've got an incredibly efficient operation delivering it at Ilford Town Hall, and that when people get called up in their cohort to have the vaccination, it needs to happen, because it's not just about protecting yourself, it's about protecting your aunt, your uncle, your mum, your dad, your grandparents, It's about being responsible for everyone else around you. And you might think, yeah, well, I'm young, I'm fit, I'm healthy, I'm fine. That's not going to hurt me. Well, A, that's not true. There's actually a higher amount of young people that have been impacted this time and more severely than they were in the first wave. And secondly, you don't want to be the person that's responsible for giving the coronavirus to one of your more older relatives who then ends up in the ICU unit at King George Hospital. That is not fair and that is irresponsible. But once you've had the vaccine, that will tackle it. I think as well there, and this is one of the things I'm going to be working with some of our local religious leaders and scholars on, there I have had a few constituents talking to me, again, some made up nonsense about the vaccines not being halal. Obviously, I've got a very large Muslim community, but I have spoken to some senior scholars, including people who've put out essentially some scholarly learnings based on the writings in the Quran and Hadith to say that actually this is absolutely untrue and it's totally safe and within Islamic teaching to be able to take up the vaccine. We had some constituents saying to me that it had elements of having pork in it. Again, completely false, absolutely false, and simply not true at all. I've literally stood there with people from the Muslim community when I went to visit Ilford Town Hall. People are extremely religious, watching them give thanks to God because they've had the vaccine. They know it's going to not just save their life, but could save the lives of their family. I think that's a really important message to get out there. There's a lot of people spreading some nonsense that is very, very dangerous. And if we want to get through to the other side of this, and we want to make sure that all of our businesses haven't collapsed and our hospitals are not overwhelmed, we do need people to be responsible, look at the actual scientific facts, not just garbage that's been put out on Facebook.
Mr. Tarry, in terms of the vaccine rollout in Ilford South, do you have any figures for what percentage of the over 70s or 80s that have actually taken the vaccine, and when do you envisage the next stage of the rollout where probably it'll be these over 60s that will be
we're really, yeah, we've got a very efficient program. Actually, this is one of the really positive things for Ilford and for Redbridge is that our medical folk locally have been really on it. They've been really on the ball. They're actually keen to start moving on to the next stage, the next cohort, because we've already got through a lot of the people in the older age categories. What I would say, one of the reasons I wanted to come on today to revive is that in the older age categories, like 70 and above, we, the sort of what you might call the Caucasian white English community, we are now 85 or 90% coverage. Yeah. Okay. In the same South Asian BAME communities, we are only about 65%.
Wow.
Now that means there's a massive amount of, and this is why we need to take it seriously. We need to bust the myths, and we need to be saying to people, look at the facts. This is something that has been fully tested and is totally safe, and therefore, there's no reason whatsoever that you shouldn't be going out and get it. And we can't be in a situation where we know that in Ilford, our communities have been disproportionately hit, not just socioeconomically, but by COVID itself. And so actually, this is actually the solution in terms of moving forward to a safer Ilford and a safer East London, where we've beaten the virus. But if you've got 25% of people not taking taking the vaccine, we're going to really struggle to move on. It means businesses won't open as quickly. It means we're going to be in lockdown longer. And it means that more people are going to die. And, as the local MP for Ilford, I do not want that. And I will have the debate and the argument with any single person out there who wants to spread conspiracy theories and hoax facts about the vaccine. We need to get serious now. This is literally going to save people's lives. And, it's not just about your own personal safety. It's about your responsibility to your friends and your loved ones that you get that vaccination and make sure your family get that vaccination when it happens.
So within your own constituency, for your listeners, for the benefit of your listeners, could you kindly let us know where the vaccination centres are, and if you do have plans to open up any further pop-up vaccination centres?
Sure. So if you go on the Redbridge Council website, all the information is there. Our main vaccination centre is at Ilford Town Hall. There's also two other sites within Redbridge as well. And also, by the way, it's important that people continue to get tested. The testing centres are still there. All of that stuff is equally important as well, because you've still got to contain the virus. And you've got to also stick with the regulations. Once you've had your first jab, your first injection of the vaccine, you then have to wait until the second one before you can be a little bit more relaxed in terms of anything. So it's not fully effective till you had that second rise. Because what we've had is that some people think, oh, I've had one vaccine shot, I'm totally fine now. That's not the case. You've got to have both, because that's what gives you the full immunity. It's like finishing a course of medicine. You've got to finish it right to the end to make sure that you're actually going to get the full impact of it. We are looking as well, and you can contact my office. It's sam.tarry.mp@parliament.uk. If you've got any queries and you're from Ilford, I was with today with the Locksteward Primary Care Network. You know, they are looking to do pop-up centres. If you get in touch and you're a listener from a masjid or from a church, and you've got people who are from one of our ethnic minority communities in large proportions that you're likely to have attending one of those religious institutions, we will bring a vaccination pop-up centre to your masjid and do it there, literally. That's how serious we are about taking it out there.
Yeah,
So
this was something similar. That was my actual next question. So we had some informal discussions with, I think, the London Borough of Newham, and they're thinking of doing something similar, whereby they want to go and target local gurdwaras, mosques, churches. So those people that are maybe apprehensive to go to a pop-up centre or a town hall, they would be more trusting in going into a mosque. So you're saying that this is something that you're working on for Ilford South as well?
Absolutely, yes. And if any of your listeners, you know, that's something that you could help us with, please get in touch with my office, and I'll personally be making sure that that happens over the next week or two. So yeah, please do get in touch. And look, as I said, unfortunately, I have to go to another event in a minute or so. But look, the key thing I want to get across to your listeners is this is about how we get out of this pandemic. You want to end lockdown? Get the vaccine. You want to save your grandparents' lives? Get the vaccine. You want to save your aunts and uncles' lives? Get the vaccine. You know. And if you've got any questions, you've got any things you're unsure about, and you're from Ilford South, please do contact my office. I've got a whole team of people, myself, willing to help with any of your queries, whether it be to do with the vaccine, whether it to be, you know, getting tested, or whether it to be anything about your employment situation, your housing situation, your business. We are helping hundreds and hundreds of people each week. So please don't hesitate to get in touch. We're here to help.
Mr. Tarry, it's always a pleasure to host you on Revive, and hopefully we'll speak very, very soon.
Thanks, Umar. Absolute superstar. You take care, and good night to all your listeners.
Thank you, mate. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you very much, guys. That was the Drive Time show where we had the Member of Parliament for Ilford South, Mr. Sam Tarry, joining us in reference to what the rollout is looking like for the vaccines in Ilford South, and debunking any of the conspiracy theories that are being circulated via social media and other mediums. We will return to you after these short messages. Thank you very much.